Let's do this. All right. First of all, can you tell me kind of what the music scene in North Carolina was like when you first got into it?
Well, I moved down there in '74. I was living in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, playing with this group, and they went down to do a tour, and they had a truck wreck, and the guys lived in the area, so they just said, "The heck with it, we're going home." And I found myself sort of stuck in Charlotte, which was, we played a gig at, I can't think of the name of the place right now, but we played this gig at this hall they had there. It was a great event for us, but that was it. And so I decided, well, I'm going to stay down here, went back to Ohio, brought my wife down, and I started going to the clubs like you do, which, with a horn or something, to the jams and trying to find out what the scene was. Well, the problem with Charlotte at the time was that it was a dry county. And in the bars, you couldn't really make a living. So, I played bars, I played with, country bands, I played with, soul bands and jazz bands and whatever there was, but the pickings were sort of slim. And then I met George and John. They were looking for a third wheel with what they were doing, and I went over to do an audition. I think Carl Firstman was there too. And we all just sort of hit it off, and I really loved, John was just an amazing perfectionist. But we hit it off, and so I joined their band, and George was very aggressive about getting gigs, and of course we were really good, and we put on some events like the Queen's College Show and stuff, but we were starting to go all over the South, really, not just Charlotte, but in the state of North Carolina, but getting out of state and going to different places, playing gigs that paid us more, and it was just the three of us. We traveled in my car, so we had low overhead, we were multi-instrumentalists, so we could put on a whole show for you. All you needed was the three of us. So we probably did that for about, 12 months, maybe a little longer. While I was only there 18 months, but the music scene was a friendly music scene. Charlotte was just really starting to open up to jazz because Chick Corea and some of these artists were, doing the fusion thing, using the guitar, electric guitars with the jazz, Larry Coryells and the Al Di Meols and what have you. And so, there was emerging from sort of the blackness of the jazz and the whiteness of the fusion into a whole other type of music. And Charlotte was very receptive and open to that. And so, naturally, I loving all those different styles, fell in with a lot of the musicians down there, invite me out to play, invite me out to do the gigs. Is that my phone going crazy?
Could be.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Always have a flip phone so you can kill it. But it was very receptive to me, and I managed to work a lot down there. But again, playing myriad styles and being able to play sax or keyboards. I had my upright bass back then and stuff. Very open, very friendly, trusting, and growing.
So what if it was a dry county? What were the bars for? They were basically to listen to music.
They were to basically listen to music. There were some BYO bars where you could bring your own and let you, the parking lot and whatnot, but they could only sell beer in the bar. So everybody's really, drinking a lot of beer, but no hard liquor, stuff like that. And you had to go to what was a state-run store. I think it was called an ABC store, alcohol board or whatever, and well-lit building, and walk in and I want real hard liquor and catch it on cameras. So it's I believe it's changed down there a lot, and I haven't been to Charlotte in a long time, but what I read and what I catch is that it has a very vibrant scene going now. Mm-hmm. The money back then were in private parties and in resorts, because the resorts had no restrictions on them whatsoever, and they would pay you enough money to go $300-$500 for three guys in 1975 North Carolina, where the cost of living was definitely lower than most of the country. You could, if you didn't have bad habits or too many kids or something, make a good living down there. So
yeah, I heard that from most of the people I spoke to there, there was very much kind of a jamming scene as well, and there were places like the Double Door that people could just kind of go. And
Vassar Clements was in Charlotte one night when they're having some country event, and Moose Magic, George, John, and I were playing Chick Corea music at the Double Door, and Vassar walks in and says, "Hey, can I sit in?" And we're like, "Dude, absolutely." So he pulls out his fiddle, and we're thinking, can you do Spain? You know, Chick Corea's famous fusion song, right? And so now he doesn't know it note for note, but the man's got it in, right? So we start playing and then point to him. And smoke's coming off the strings. Yeah, it was just Charlotte really was a magical place at that time because like I said, it was very open, and a guy like Vassar Clemens felt very comfortable walking in and saying, "Hey," and we were like not intimidated by him or anything like that. We're more like, "Please." So I think that sort of typifies how I felt about Charlotte then, and I mean, I didn't really have any bad experiences. When I was moving down there as a black guy coming out of North and all this stuff from New Jersey, I was skeptical. And my wife was white at the time, and I was very skeptical about how we would be received in the South. And so, it was great. I didn't have any problems down there. And I moved to California in 1976 because one, this wonderful group I was in was no longer. And I wasn't going to wait for Charlotte to grow. I wanted to go to California, which was already a place where you could work. And my motivation has always been to work. And I enjoy playing, and I want to, I would like to continue to live well as a musician rather than split it up between. It really diminishes how much you can put into it if you have a day job or something like that. So, very fortunate.
Do you remember how you actually first met John and George? Were they looking for another member?
Well, word of mouth is, it was a small community in the sense that everybody kind of knew each other, and somebody would tell these guys, "Hey, there's this guy Amo in town, have you heard of him?" And they go, no, whatever. So, they were actually, they say they were conducting auditions, but I don't know how many people they actually looked. I was by myself when I went there. And it seemed like the audition ended that day. So, "Hey, you're it." "Okay, I'm it." "Yeah, you're it." "Well, what does it mean?" And so then, George and John were living together in an apartment at the time, and I had just moved over to that side of town on Nations Ford Road. And so we were very close to proximity to get over there, and so we started rehearsing intensely. And when you have like minds, it doesn't take long for everybody to really figure out that this is a cool groove. So I spent a lot of time hanging out with them, and they spent almost all their time together working on music and taking trips, and they were very active people. So, we did a lot of fun things that weren't musical as well. And, bond formed, and, we had the same aspirations of trying to do more than just be giggers. Just, go play the club, go play the party, go play the special event, go play the concert. That's what formulated the ideas for the Queen's College concert, which was a pretty cool thing. We pulled all these different factions together, from Charlotte there, and everybody brought a piece of the pie to that. And it was so. You didn't have to change who you were. Going into some other style, people seem to be very accommodating. If you wanted to learn how to play jazz, you could go somewhere and they let you get up there and sort of encourage you, which is what it takes until you really, mature into that type of genre or whatever it is, or get enough exposure, experience, or study. But it was very open and giving, so it was easy. Hanging out with those guys, effortless. So.
What they lived in the same place, right? They had an apartment.
Yeah, they had an apartment. I forget the name of the thing, but off of Nations Ford Road, which is sort of the southern edge of Charlotte. I don't know how long those two knew each other. Because like I said, I was sort of new at the time, and.
Do you remember how their personalities differed?
Yeah, and they were very different. George was a very eclectic, brilliant, spontaneous person, and John studied physics. He was a very, what would I say, John? I mean, John was about as light on his feet as Steve Martin, the comedian. But at the same time, his focus on whatever it was he was trying to do was, it wouldn't waver. You know, he was going to study something because he wanted to know it, not because he wanted to impress you or get an A in the class. He wanted to know it. You know, I mean, there was a drummer named Bill Bruford who was playing with the group Yes, who was one of my favorite drummers because he was such a meticulous perfectionist and very skilled. You know, talented of course, but skilled because of how he worked at his craft. And that was John. You know, John, he wanted it to flow and be wonderful, but he wanted it to be right, and he would practice and read and study and get it right, and then he would perform it right. You know, at the same time with a smile on his face and, you know, laughing and making jokes and stuff. So George was somewhat like me. He had stuff everywhere. Now, I know where everything is. I know where everything is, but nobody else does, and nobody else would ever be able to figure it out, you know. George was like that too, you know. He knew what he needed to know, but he was a very, very spontaneous person, and I found that very refreshing, especially to be a multi-instrumentalist. Not to mention we're both lefties. You know, I'm a lefty, you know, guitar and bass, ambidextrous, but I mean, I'm a lefty on those instruments. So, and he was a lefty too, so we, you know, could share the stories about how everybody always wanted to turn you into a right-handed player. You know, I go for bass lessons and I go, well, show me how to play. He says, well, you have to turn it around. I said, dude, this is how I play. See, nothing. Say, oh, okay, yeah, you play that way. So, he was a very spontaneous person, and I thought that had they continued to produce music, that there would be some Hall of Fame classics coming out of that mindset and the compatibility that they had with each other, that they could really converse musically, you know, without, you know, speak the whole language without uttering a word, you know, so.
And what was Moose? What would you describe Moose Magic as?